Oh, happy Monday, everyone. You're in great company. I'm Rae Bonney, and with you for the next hour of my show today, as always, is all about people, recognising that it really is okay to not be okay. So turn up your radio. This week, we're diving headfirst into the much talked about issue of workplace mental health, which gives me pause to remember that today is in fact the 11th of September. It's 16 years on from that day that affected so many people in their workplace. Now known as Patriot Day, I just wanted to take a moment to honour the nearly 3,000 innocent lives taken that day back in 2001 and all of those who so nobly aided their fellow citizens as we commemorate all of the people who lost their lives saving others. Humankind, it knows so many faces, and on that day we saw the amazing best and the absolute worst. Now, last week we recognised World Suicide Prevention Day, and this week Are You OK Day on Thursday. There are so many ways these days in which we address, and way too often not address, the critical issue of our human safety and dignity. Whether it be a day or a week that we peek cautiously from our shield of okayness just for that moment to say, we get this, but do we really? The workplace is such a setting that is full of people toiling, suffering and struggling to keep their mask attached. And back in May this year, I tuned into Jenny Brockie's program on SBS Insight for the program Mind at Work, which was all about navigating the workplace with a mental illness. Like, do you tell your boss? If you do, how will they react? And what happens if your mental illness might affect your ability to do the job? My guest today, Andrew Campbell, appeared on that very show talking about the incredible organisation Mates in Construction. They're a charity established in 2008 to reduce the high level of suicide amongst Australian construction workers. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Rae. Thanks for asking me to come along today and speak about something that I'm passionate about.
Well, you actually didn't come along because you stayed in Queensland, and our station manager, John Farmer, said, so is he flying in? I said, no, just phoning in today.
Yeah, I couldn't leave this beautiful weather up here at the moment, I don't think, to the colder weather down south.
Well, it's not too bad today. I think we're heading for a top of 19 degrees, so that's one of our first here.
Nice.
So, Andrew, I've known about Mates in Construction for quite some time, having worked on the Heads Up program at Beyond Blue a few years ago and continue to this very day. And, came onto my radar the amazing work that you guys do in addressing the astronomical suicide rates in your industry.
Yeah, in 2008, Mates Construction was launched in Queensland at the Queensland Tennis Centre with Angry Anderson, actually. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago, and I actually spoke a while ago with some people, and to be quite honest, it was back in 2008. I'm not sure if everyone knows what they're doing in 2008, but it was obviously something that we didn't ever talk about. So it was when it was first came onto my radar, I really, it was a bit complex, thinking, is this really something that we need? And then when Mates Construction had launched a university to undertake, statistics that were gathered through a payout of people who were passing away in the construction industry, they realised that most of the deaths were coming from suicide, not from accidental things outside of work. And that sort of put a shockwave through our industry when they realised that if you're a male construction worker in Australia, your suicide rate is 3 times the average in Australian data. So, yeah, it sort of sent a few shockwaves through our industry, I suppose.
Not surprisingly, really. But going back to just before we jump into that a bit more, you guys are a charity and established in 2008, and you're controlled and owned by the Australian building and construction industry, is that right?
Yeah, it's a not-for-profit organisation, operates. Actually, the Queensland government just donated $1 million to Mates in Construction this month. Actually, it might have been a month ago. But, it's basically a not-for-profit.
Yes.
There's various people that fund it. There's some major organisations that have joined it now as large sponsors, some big multinational organisations that are, because like I said, it's a free service. That's another thing that it works so well. You don't have to worry about how much it's going to cost, like an employee assistance program. It's free to everyone to use, but it pretty much comes out of the industry is how it was launched, and it has a lot of backers through multinational construction development companies that fund it and keep it going to try and keep up the work that they've been doing since 2008.
So do you have a lot of volunteers as well that help out with the organisation?
Well, I suppose, the Connect, like I said, I don't know how much your listeners know about the program, the general awareness training, the 3 levels, general awareness training, which we try and roll out on all the projects that everyone can do. And that's just a general awareness about what suicide looks like and mental health looks like in our industry. And it really, like I said, it's just a general awareness.
Yes.
People that find a bit of passion like themselves come on asked to do the next level of training, which is called a connector training. And that's where they give you a few more skills to basically put people in touch with professional services. So they just sort of teach you how to basically connect people. And then the third level is the assist trained, which is the suicide intervention training.
Yep.
So they're the 3 main levels, and I've been a bit reluctant to do the 3rd level since 2008, but recently had to go through the 2-day intense course. It was very, very full-on
it is
training when they're teaching you to intervene with a person that's about to commit suicide. So that was very challenging to get through those 2 days, but they're the 3 levels. So
well, I know that through those programs, those 3 very distinct programs, Mates in Construction have trained around 118,000 people in these programs and managed more than almost 6,000 cases of vulnerability as well.
Yes, that's the numbers. Actually, I logged on before to come downstairs, and the numbers just keep turning over.
They're actually clicking over as we speak, which is just so inspiring to think that, given the vulnerability of the industry, that something's actually being done. And I think that's really important to recognise. But there was something, Andrew, that, I was thinking about this morning about the show, and that quite often we can conflate these figures and say it's to do with the construction industry, or it's to do with the legal industry or the health industry, that there's so much suicide occurring, where in fact these industries attract people that are perhaps vulnerable to begin with. Would that be a fair comment?
No. Well, I don't know how much to talk about the Insight program and how much didn't get shown, but one of the things that happened when I got down there is we met people before we went into the filming, and some of the people out of other industries that didn't even know of Mates in Construction, and some of the excellent work that's been done in other high-risk areas. One of the gentlemen that spoke was the bloke from New South Wales Ambulance Service, and
yes,
they had a big issue with post-traumatic stress disorder, and like he said, on the night it's just spiralling out of control. The police services are having the same thing at the moment across Australia. The military's having issues. Football and AFL and rugby league, they've had a big suicide rate in the northern New South Wales, southeast corner of Queensland from rugby league football was playing, second grade football. So I don't think that's a fair comment. I think it's an industry that everyone needs, an area that we need to concentrate on, no matter what industry you're in. It's just that Mates have started to turn it around and have come up with a program that works for our industry, and I think could work for any industry, really. Oh,
well, I think it's very, very transferable. But when you're saying, because we get this conflated thing about, blaming industries or blaming workplaces for people's mental health conditions, and I just want to stick with that bit just for a little bit longer, if I may, because, when we're looking at Defence Force, for example, a lot of people are coming, veterans are returning here to Australia with no form of employment that's accessible, and a lack of support for their mental health conditions, and are ending up in industries like mining and construction as well. So how do you see that?
Yeah, our industry is pretty hard industry to be in. One of the sessions, information sessions, we were always renowned. If you were doing it tough, just to shut up and harden up, as men sometimes used to say.
And still say, I was doing a bit of researching, just reading people's feedback on. We're going to talk about Fly the Flag Day.
Yep.
And some of the comments by people in your industry saying that, just toughen up, you're a bunch of pansies, this is ridiculous, just go to work. If you don't like it, find something else. And I felt that was quite confronting.
Well, again, I think that it is the latter than it is today, since, like I said, since we've now made it, identified it as an issue in our industry. that I think it's probably more readily to now say that's not the case, to toughen up, that we have the people that you can talk to and have that right. You just need the right place to do it, and I think the way that the mate sets it up, that we can do that, have those conversations. That, like I said, we've found out that most of our workers or the construction industry workers won't go and see a person that wears a white coat with a degree and sit on a couch. They want to talk to a fellow worker that's gone through tough times and can relate to them and talk in an open environment. So our industry has changed a lot over the last 8 or 9 years in regard to that sort of a toughen up approach.
But you guys can't be everywhere, can you? And I look at a lot of your supporters and your partners, or a lot of the larger, construction. Can't string a word together. Construction groups and industry leaders. But if you think about 95% of Australian businesses here in Australia are family owned, and a lot of those are small 1-man, 2-man bands like builders and tradesmen who employ perhaps an apprentice. And they make up a lot of. So how do you get across those micro businesses?
It is something that just by publishing everything that we do, on the internet and various medium outlets, as we've said before about the night that I went down to SBS, I've had people reach out that and just thank me for talking about it. So and it's a challenge that I would say we have there's mandatory training for apprentices that do mates in constructions. They come through there. Some of the organisations use that now as whether you go into commercial into town or not. But some of the people that have, and the most high risk people we have in our industry, apart from construction, the young males, the apprentices. So some of the apprentice training groups, especially in Queensland, already have that as part of their their induction program is to run through that mates in construction training, so they're aware of it, whether they go to commercial or domestic. So there are avenues that it's trying to get out into the rest of the industry. As you may know now, that mates in construction has now gone mates in mining as well due to that need. So they are getting out into other areas. There's been a large family waste company sign mates in construction up as well. So some people are seeing it as a great program and it's having great success. They're actually reaching out to mates in construction to get them to come into their area. You don't have to be at the big end of town to get their assistance.
Yeah, and I think that what you said before, it's, rolling out your program, it's, even though it started within construction, it will still resonate across many other industries. But do you think it's predominantly attractive to men?
I suppose only because of the word mate. There's no reason the program isn't, as we're more gender neutral now, there's no reason that the same programs can't be rolled out into other organisations. Some of the people that contacted me or, followed me after the SBS interview come out of, shopping, Coles and Woolworths and places like that. So I gather people realise that those sort of, key programs that mates have can be rolled out anywhere. So I definitely think it's, something that's getting out there. It's, I was watching TV yesterday trying to find something. The footy finals are finished and saw a thing on Are You OK Day, the guy that launched Are You OK Day.
Yes.
I couldn't believe, I'm sitting there trying to find something that I could watch. And
Gavin Larkin.
I was just blown away. I don't know if you probably know more about it than I did, but I was blown away that there are so many mediums out there. Last weekend I got a text message from a friend saying I got someone doing it tough. Nothing to do with the construction industry. It's a personal thing. And how do I do and what do I do? And that's what the message that mates are trying to put out there. There's so many help groups, but people don't want to. When you're in that down dark place, people aren't thinking about how do I Google suicide prevention. And there are so many meetings, Beyond Blue, Are You OK? When you search it, there are so many organisations that can help you. But the thing with the mates is I've already got the phone numbers in the phone now, so if I get a call. I got one from WA late last year from someone ringing me from WA. So I got a worker about to commit suicide. What do I do? And that just sort of blows you away. And what you do is ring him up and talk to him, keep him on the phone. And while you got him on the other phone, I had someone text through the numbers, and I said and showed them the process. And that's the good thing about the way the mates construction set up.
Do you find that having completed the assist training, and I did it many years ago when I became a Lifeline counsellor, and that was life-changing for me, Andrew, because it gave me so much confidence just to have that normal conversation when somebody's really not travelling well to the extent they do want to die, that it's an okay conversation to have and you don't need to be scared, because there is quite an interesting process to it.
It's very powerful, isn't it? Like I said, I never had to sit through something so powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know how yours was delivered, but the way ours was delivered, and we had small groups going around while we were there for the day, and the instructor said the 2-day course is that people walk out in the first 10 minutes because they can't handle how confronting it is, and that was probably the most. I'd always had things to do, I'd always done the first 2 levels and had what I call flittering on the outside of it all, but when you dive into the hard, tough conversations when someone's sitting in front of you, like I said the other day, a grown man sitting there crying, scratching his skin.
Yes.
It's tough.
It's confronting, for people having the conversation as well, and that too, it's really important to know how to take care of yourself. And I know that that's part of your training as well. In Mates in Construction, it's not only helping others, but it's helping yourself too, which is really, really important.
The courses, doing that course at the end of it, they would sit us down and read, get our mind out of the dark place. It was quite good how they have those support networks. It's definitely things that you also never think about. You think about all the intervention stuff, but never think of the people helping those people, which is also a key component of the whole process.
Yeah, well, next up we're going to play this little snippet of your SBS debut onto Jenny Brockie's Insight program. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we create these environments for men to talk. And this isn't about the exclusion of women at all. And when I posted something on Facebook about our interview today, it's, men bloody well do talk. And they do express their emotions. Don't be in any doubt about that. Men require, like anyone, safety, security and dignity to enable them to do that. So when we have this narrative always that men are dying because they can't talk or can't express, I would say that's really far from the truth. So we'll leave you with that. Now I'm going to attempt to play this, starting from, we just left off with the guy from the ambulance talking about what we were speaking about before. So here we go.
An employment contract.
What do other people think about this, the pros and cons of disclosing you've got a mental illness? Yes.
Yeah, we realised I've come out of the construction industry, we realised we had an issue with suicide rates in about 2008. They were 3 times the average. Since then, some organisations have come together and really driven home the positivity with managing mental health in the construction industry. And, we think it's been a lot more beneficial. I believe the suicide rates come down a lot. We find it, that if you're open and honest and talk to the employees and let them know that there is, if you're the best person for the job, if you let me know of your condition, I can help you with it. And that doesn't mean that person has to come to work every day at the same time and finish at the same time. But, you're allowed to take time off work. You imagine a workplace, which my industry now, which is hard as nails, is now can talk and I can ask a bloke on site, are you feeling okay today? Yeah. And he can answer me honestly. And that's the sort of environment this Mates in Construction that's been running since 2008 has done. And it's changed our workforce that a bloke can finally ask another bloke, are you all right to come to work today? If you're not, I'll help you. Let's go and get help. And that's all it's about. And I don't think it's that difficult, and we should start talking about it more in the workplace.
There we go. That was Andrew Campbell on SBS Insight with Jenny Brockey. It was really short, Andrew, wasn't it?
It was 2.5 hours of interviews and discussions, and you see 50 minutes or 55 minutes. So yeah, it was a bit sad to see a lot of stuff end up on the cutting room floor, as they say. So
great points that you made, and I love how you deal with it. And in fact, that's where I met you first. It was about 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning, which I watched my best TV. And I thought, well, there's a man that I really want to talk to. And I think I contacted you straight away on LinkedIn. Yeah. And that's where it all started. But tell me, what did end up on the cutting room floor that we can learn about now?
Yeah, like I said, it was good to share a lot of the stories that not just Mates in Construction are doing, but other industries are doing. So that was a positive thing to see. It's not just been driven from one industry or one part of town. Like I said, there wasn't enough talked about how the whole mates in construction, which we've talked about a bit this morning, how it was all set up and, the work that they're doing and the processes of the general awareness connector and assist trained people, I suppose, and just by spreading more people through the workplace that understand it, that it's a lot easier to deal with when people are doing it tough. So that's the main message, I suppose, is that by training, hundreds of thousands of general awareness people, it just gives you a general awareness of when someone's not doing it all right. Because a lot of the stuff I've seen about people that have committed suicide, that their mates or co-workers say, I noticed he was doing such and such, and I noticed he wasn't engaged at work, and that's what the general awareness,
how to have that conversation.
How to have that conversation, like I agree with what you said. Blokes will have that conversation. They may not have it out in the open with another 50 co-workers, but, you only got to take a step outside the door and blokes will open up for you, Like I said, I've been through that and sat through many discussion with blokes doing it tough. So they just want someone to talk to. And like I said, I don't even understand it. My job's not to understand it. It's just give them someone to talk to.
Yes.
Because let's face it, that's what you do with your best friends, isn't it? You go to your best friend and ask them, tell them you're doing it tough. They don't tell you what you're doing wrong and how you fix it. That's what you do with your friends. So that's all we're trying to say, mate. You don't have to understand it, because I still don't understand it.
No.
But do I want people to talk about it so we can do something about it? I sure do.
I was meeting with a group of cohorts yesterday, and we were having this discussion around, how do you identify in men when they're not travelling okay? And I said, they've got a face. You can look at somebody's face and actually know that they're not doing so well. They don't have to have the words, and men don't interact like women do. I think I use up my entire word count by about 9 o'clock every morning on various boring things. But men don't communicate like women, but there are signs and there are ways of communicating that I think perhaps we're missing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, if you give the people the right platform and not try and jump, one of the things mates do a good job at, I'm not sure what the other suicide prevention programs use, but people just want someone, they don't want you to solve their problems, they just want someone to talk to.
Yes.
I think that, I don't know if you've seen the old adage with the nail sticking out of the bloke's head and him asking why he's got a headache and how he could fix it and all those sort of things, and it's a bit like that. When you're having the suicide conversations, most of the people just want someone to talk to, and they don't need you to solve the problems. I think that's probably what scared me off doing the assist training for so long, is because I thought I would have to be able to fix these things.
That's right.
And after, when you realise you don't have to fix it, you just have to listen. And I saw a good snippet a while ago of the last survivor that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that. I can't remember the gentleman's name. And the first thing he thought about when he stepped off the bridge was, why did I just do that? That's all I want people to have, that conversation. So after he stepped off the bridge and lucky enough to survive, he wished he hadn't took that step.
But he was just waiting for somebody to ask him, wasn't he?
To ask him, what's wrong? What's going on with you today? That's what most of the people that put up their hand for the connector train and aren't the most intelligent or highly educated people. They're just people that think that, they care about their co-workers and fellow humans, and that's all they're trying to do. So,
but when we're talking about connecting guys in particular, because that's what we're talking about with respect to women as well, when we're talking about connecting guys, when we've identified something's not right and we've had that conversation, in my experience here in Australia and around the world, when we're looking at resources for men around mental health, very, very deficient, very difficult to know where to send a man when he comes to you. And I heard this story this morning of a man who said to me his wife used to keep him awake all night by burning him with a cigarette to keep him awake, and then threatened to go and kill herself. And so he said, I would come to work absolutely exhausted every single day, but would never disclose it. I mean, this is back in the 70s. How do you connect guys like that to help?
Yeah, that one's...
Should we just go to a song and try and work that out?
Yeah.
No, let's don't. But
there are a lot of help. Like I said, but the ones in our industry, and I'm not saying there, are usually other issues which are financial, drugs and alcohol, and the work-life balance that our industry doesn't have. So they're the ones that are predominantly the ones that we sort of get. So we have drug and alcohol counsellors that are available and financial assistance types of organisations and.
But should somebody have quite a chronic drug addiction like ice, and I know a number of people who are on my watch at the moment who do, and I absolutely have to scratch my head to find out where to connect these people, especially when they're not financially buoyant, because good help costs a lot of money. So it's, we've got a lot of places, like Lifeline, Lifeline,
Yep.
131114.
Yep.
I know you guys have a national helpline as well. Is that 24/7?
Yes.
And that's 1300 642 111.
One.
No,
Yep.
no, that's national. But you don't have representation here in Victoria nor Tasmania.
No, that's a bit disappointing, but that is the case.
Do you want me to start something up here for you? I'll fly the flag for sure.
Yeah. No, we would love that. Like I said, we were trying to get up to Northern Territory to Darwin a while ago as well. But one of the things with mates is we want to be able to go and do it properly and have a place to run out of, and the need for that. So it is something that until we're asked to come into an area, and I think we're going to have the buy-in from the people in that area, we're still trying to win over as many people as we can in the areas we are. We've only been in Western Australia for a short time, and that's growing really good support over there. You can see a lot of organisations, which you said before, large organisations jumping on board and supporting mates in Western Australia, which is fantastic.
Yes, and your point is that, you guys are so community focused as well. When you're talking about just having, say, representation in Northern Territory or Victoria or Tasmania is not good enough, because you need to have that feel of community and being a permanent fixture. Yeah,
that's right. Like I said, it's just something that if we do it, we need, like I said, to connect. The other person, which I think we're going to talk about later on, is if I'm doing it tough as a support person, I've got a field officers, and there's various people through the organisation that you can call and have those conversations with. So, even before I come on this morning, I called John Brady, operations manager, and a few of the other senior people. I've got their numbers in my phone. I can call them any time of the day. So,
yes,
just having those right support people for everyone, not just the people you're counselling, is a real key to the program.
Yep. Well, let's go to a break, and when we come back, perhaps we can talk about how people can become involved and really support, some of these initiatives of Mates in Construction and now Mates in Mining, and where that might go as well, because it really is all about having that conversation, isn't it?
Yep.
Now, I got carried away, as I often do on a Monday with my guest, forgetting that a song will end and another one might begin. Andrew, are you still there?
Oh, I am still here, Rae. It's all good.
Technically, the show is not going to sound as smooth as silk when you replay it for yourself, but that's all right. Andrew and I were actually just talking about, again, the lack of resources and the lack of support pathways, especially for men when they're, experiencing some of the really, really difficult life challenges like drug addiction, financial problems that can quite often escalate in industries such as mining and construction. Would you say, Andrew?
Yes, it's been a bit prevalent for a few years in our industry, and it's something that we're trying to change. But like you said, it's getting not just identifying people with those sort of issues, it's what you do with them.
Yes.
Once you've identified it is when the problems arise.
Yes. I mean, you mentioned industries before, like sport and health, and, you look at the mining boom as well. Do you think that created a lot of vulnerability for people who are earning lots of money and not expecting those industries perhaps not to be as buoyant after a time? Yeah,
most of the issues out in the mining industry, especially in Queensland, the biggest issue is not just the money, but it's I don't know if you know much about the FIFO and
FIFO
workers,
yes.
But yeah, so it wasn't just the money. The money was an issue. They earn massive amounts of money, and when they come off their time, they can do whatever, and then the money dries up completely. But the biggest issue when we were going out there was the time away from family and friends. They're doing 3 weeks, 3 to 4 to weeks. I've heard of silly things like 6 weeks on and 1 week home. It's just too hard, and we found a lot of family people and young people struggled with that part of the whole living in a 6x4 cell, or whatever they call it, a donga. I think they call it
a donga, yeah.
Term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a donga, and they're living in a 6x4 cell, working 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you miss all those things that come along with, being spending time with your family, whether they be your immediate family or your brothers, sisters, and that sort of part of your family. So they were probably the biggest issues that the industry still, which is why Mates in Construction's gone to Mates in Mining to try and offer support for those sort of things.
Yes, and sometimes it's really, really simple. I remember hearing a story a few years ago about a guy from the mining industry, and he was new to it, and he was pretty quickly coined as a slacker, not doing a great job because he was late every day onto the job. And the onboarding process back then wasn't probably as efficient as it is now. So when he was onboarded, he was basically given a donger and given a job to do, and off he went. But it wasn't until one of the HR people who really actually cared, I had a conversation with this person who wasn't given an alarm clock. And so he was waking up late every morning because he was so stressed that he wasn't going to wake up on time. He would be exhausted, and so he'd fall asleep at the last hour. And so he was furnished with an alarm clock, and everything was good to go. But
that's one way. Like I said, we had other things with just changing the rosters around to try and make it a bit easier. On the people they have. I don't know if you know what a pajama day is when you're working away, but they try to have the Sunday off sometimes every fortnight. But in those camps, what are they to do in the middle of nowhere? You either drink or
yes,
take some drugs on that one day, and then therefore it sort of wrecks it for the last bit of the rotation. So
yeah.
Yes, it's been an issue for a long time and still is. Not just in mining in Queensland, but probably all around Australia.
Now, with so much awareness being raised, though, Andrew, in so many different areas of mental health, we had Mental Health Week last week. We've got Are You OK Day, Suicide Prevention Day last week, and Are You OK Day coming up this week. You guys took an initiative last week and on Are You OK Day this week as well, flying a flag.
Yes, we're proud to announce we have over 700 sites registered this year. I think we had about just under 300 last year. So they're the sort of things that we're proud to say we're hopefully making a difference. And driving around some of the work sites in Brisbane last couple of weeks, you drive into a site and see the flag flying. You obviously think, well, this is a good place to come along to, and obviously co-badging it with. I didn't know much about Are You OK Day until last night, so I watched that show on ABC and I was sort of blown away a bit. But I've stood up in front of workers and what I'm here for to do and ask you, are you okay? And as we were talking about before, is if you some blokes are loud and some aren't so loud, but the ones you can see, even if they're not the loud, boisterous ones, I stop and just say, you okay? I'll grab them afterwards. And because like I said, I think men do give off body language when they're not doing it too well. So. And
that's right. And a typical conversation in Australia between men is, "Hey, going, mate? Yeah, good." And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. So, thinking about how we can extend that, and one of my tips is to ask, what does it feel like being you today? And that requires an answer. And it sounds a bit awkward. However, ask that twice and you're most likely going to get some kind of answer that will lead you towards identifying what the issue might be.
Yeah, no, I agree. We also use things, what are their favourite things to do when they're not at work, and I haven't got any. Well, you must have something. You must like surfing, that's the sort of conversations that are our connectors and those sort of people.
But what happens if they don't have something? Because that's a common outcome with women and men, that when you say, where's your support network? What's the first thing you go to when you need support? And quite often people will go, well, I don't know. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. And I just work. And that's typical with men because work is very, very important in terms of identity.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. But usually, you find someone, some commonalities even at work, home, family, some commonalities. Like I said, my barista's disappeared last week on me, and I nearly broke down. And my barista and I have conversations, and he's a South American guy, and so that everyone always finds someone that they relate to. Is all I'm trying to say. Is it's very rarely, even the people I've talked to that are struggling with, I was thinking about suicide, is that they've all got one. I don't want to talk about personal events. But one bloke that I've been dealing with was thinking about suicide. He only had one person, and I would ring that person regularly.
Yes.
And before I took him home sometimes, because this person wasn't always at home, I'd have to ring them first. Say, can you meet me at home? I need to bring such and such home. So everyone has one. I found there's always someone that is with that person that they've got a reason to keep on going for, and that's what you need to find.
And it always doesn't. It always doesn't have to be a person as well.
I've got a kitten at the moment, which I don't particularly wanted, but that kitten and I are growing very close at the moment. So I look forward to going home. And everyone's
Good luck.
All I'm trying to say is everyone's got at least one thing. Like I said, even the people that seem to think they have nothing, you'll always find one reason to keep on going, or one thing, like you're saying, an animal. A barista or whatever that may be, there's always something that gives that person that reason to keep going.
And there's a great story about the barista, because quite often we don't know what that thing is until it goes away. Like you've experienced that, you probably take your barista for granted every day, and then when he's gone, that's when you know.
Yeah, my kids were going, "Where's Maxie?" I go, "You can't. He's gone. He's gone. I know. We're talking about, we're going to miss him. We're going to miss him.
Is he not coming? Is he not coming back?
He's gone and doing a pilgrimage through India, would you believe?
Oh,
he's
selfish man.
Going,
really?
How selfish. I've never kept his contact details, but the coffee shop owner shows me when I go in every week now what he's up to on his weekly journey. So the kids and myself, what's he been up to? Maxie been up to this week? And yeah, so it's like I said, it's always those one thing that you need to find when you're having those tough conversations with someone, and say, let's find that one thing, and everyone's got that one thing, I think. So
yeah. So on that topic of you, Andrew, we talk a lot about other people, and when you do work in the helping industry or the safety industry, it's all about them. And quite often the people that are the administrators of help and support often get overlooked with their own challenges. And when we were talking the other day, you sort of talked about what things are like for you and what you live with. Can you talk about that?
I've got a young family and a wife that works in the police force, so we have a very busy lifestyle, and on top of your workload, there's always plenty of things to do. But like I said, I've got a couple of really good mates, and I've got a couple of really good work colleagues. So I think if you're once you've gone down this track, you can have those conversations. And as I said to you before, John Brady, one of the heads of Mates in Construction nationally, and Yorgan, I've known them for since 2008 or before. Yep. So John Brady's an ex-principal and has done a lot of work with young males, and one of the best mentors you'd probably ever come across. So they've been really good leaders and sounding boards when you're going through difficult times. Sometimes, like I said, you get those odd cases that you're dealing with, as you probably sometimes just need to have a talk to. Not every. So I said that was another thing on the Insight program is not every. I can't give you a book to show you how to help each person, and that book's going to do the next person. So John's helped me previously with I'm dealing with a person, their issues are X, Y, Z, and that you never come across it before, and it just gives you another sounding board to run things past, and then them guys are always ringing up afterwards to check on me, or how to go, or how you going, and having those people to talk about. And obviously a wife that also understands that this is an area that I'm passionate about, also helps.
Yes.
So just about having those people that you can and know what you're dealing with, I suppose, help. But and recently I went and saw Darius Boyd, who's a well-known Queensland NRL footballer, came out, and he's now signed up with Mates in Construction.
Yes, I saw that.
Which I suppose people, I'm trying to say, is normal. People don't want to come forward because they think it's abnormal. But when you see, people like Darius Boyd, saw him interviewed on stage with Mates in Construction, like I said, a couple of months ago, and to see that it is normal. Everyone, footballers, AFL footballers, NRL football, it's not something that we should stigmatise. It's across the whole of society. So to see him come forward, he spoke very well for a football player, actually. And
gee, that's stereotyping footballers, isn't it?
It is, but just his battle and how he dealt with it, and how his wife supported him, and by being open about it, which he wasn't originally, when he suffered from depression and those sort of things. Once he came out and had someone to talk to, it just opened up his whole world to realise that it is normal to not be okay, which is what we've said. You don't expect everyone to jump out of the skin and tell you every day they're okay. It's to be able to say when you're not okay, to come forward and say, I'm not okay today, I need to talk to someone. And that was one of the good messages I got out of Darius Boyd's conversation, and some of the other guys that have come forward out of, whether they be rock stars, movie stars, whatever they may be. It's normal in every society, and that's why by talking about it now, since we have in our industry since 2008, we can have those conversations on site in the right environment, and like you said, men will tell you if you give them that right place, right time to do it. So
yes,
that's key.
And it's, if we imagine that it's part of the human condition, the ebb and flow, and I know sometimes, mental health challenges can become quite extreme. However, I think that what we're catastrophizing is saying this is a big problem that we need to solve. If we just embraced better, like get your iceberg out, what the tip of the iceberg, you've got no idea what's going on for somebody else. But we tend to judge on that tip and forget that, there's so much more going on. So when you're having those conversations with people, it's important to address this is normal.
Yes.
And that it's okay to not be okay. But it's what you do next. And, addressing somebody, as we said before, with dignity and respect, and creating that environment of safety and security to have that initial conversation and provide options to people. You don't have to solve somebody's problem, but provide them with options, and, support pathways, and identifying those things, I think is critical.
Yes, like I said, one of the keys when I started down this track is that the old stigma of we can't talk about it because I want to go and kill myself is so far removed. It's quite opposite now since we've been doing this. We are talking about it, and it is making a difference. And like I said, next year, if mates get another 300 people want to fly the flag, and when you drive into a job site or a workplace that you're at, you see that flag, those people understand it. And if you need to duck out the back and have a talk about it, there's going to be someone there to talk to. And like I said, that's just want to just get out there that let's just keep on talking about it because we are making a difference. And
well, I've got a challenge for anyone that's listening in that does see a white flag flown over a building site, and even if you don't, but when you do, remember, perhaps just send a text message to one of your friends, one of your mates that you think isn't doing so well, and just say, just thinking about you, what does it feel like being you today? It's not about exercise, just, to actually connect, actually do something about it, not just, it's like Are You OK Day. As much as I, like you, really admire the foundations and the philosophy around Are You OK Day, I see so many times too often that workplaces will use it as a tick box event to say we've addressed mental health this year. It's not good enough.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It's one of the things when it's left on inside. It's not easy, but it can be done. So it's not just like you said. If you're just going to think you're going to tick the box and move on, there's a lot more to it than that. It's not easy, and but by having a system in place and people that support it, it makes it a lot easier than putting your head in the sand and thinking it's going to go away.
Well, what isn't easy is that when somebody dies from suicide, and that's not easy to deal with, especially when signs and symptoms have been recognised, but quite often the response is, oh, don't say anything because it'll just make it worse. Don't say anything because it might mean they might kill themselves. Don't say anything because it's none of my business. All of those things, really, I've had many conversations with people that don't talk to me anymore, and I don't care. At least I had the conversation.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So, because we're not addressing that this is real. In Australia, of the 8 suicides that we know of every single day, 6 are men. And everywhere in the world, every minute, a man dies from suicide. And that's a fact. They're not fudged figures. So go figure. This is real. By not having a conversation, this is where we're led to.
Yeah, like I said, some stuff's sitting in front of me 6 times more likely to die by suicide than a fatal accident on a work site. So we're worrying about people dying on work sites. But our fatality, suicide rate is 6 times more than that. So, that's why, again, we're going to keep on driving this program until those numbers come down to as low as possible.
But also looking at the contributing factors to physical workplace fatalities and injuries, Andrew, a lot of those are very much related to mental health issues. So, talking about things like fatigue, we mentioned before, when things aren't working out so well at home and people are not sleeping well, they're not eating well, they're distracted by thoughts around life and purpose, that especially when you're working in dangerous industries, machinery and tools and whatnot, very vulnerable to yourself and those around you.
Yeah, no, true. like I said, when the mining boom was going on, there was a lot of instances where people were driving cars into trees on dead straight roads. So that's either got to be fatigue-based, or it's a decision. Someone's trying to look after their family when they go. That sort of stuff we probably won't ever know the real facts. But
that's right. And when we look at, our suicide rate is double that of the road toll. A lot of the road toll, as you said, can be, cars just don't leave the road, as is often reported.
Yeah.
So it's a real issue. But I think it's, again, going back to mates in construction, I think, duplicating this across industries, and just that whole notion that it is okay to not be okay, especially if you're a man, it's okay as well. And I think men should be masculine. It's not taking away masculinity. It's not asking men to become feminine. And by the same token, I think, women should, retain their femininity as well. However, addressing that human condition that people aren't always okay, and that's okay, and what we do about that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's another website on the Gold Coast called The Livin, Livin. We've sort of done looked at some of the stuff they've done, and they've got a lot of sports stars and movie stars on their web page, and I don't know if you've heard of them guys or not, but they're doing a tremendous amount of work around Australia now, I think, and that came about from their best mate committing suicide on them when they were, about 5 or 6 years ago. But it's just a good area to show if you think that it doesn't affect people from all walks of life. Have a look at their web page, and you'll see some of the most popular movie stars and sports stars in Australia and overseas supporting those guys, so you can realise how normalised that you don't have to be. It is okay to not be normal, and people like that are coming forward supporting an organisation like that as well. So that's another good place to look if you're looking at some options. How normal options it is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's we can be looking at these things with confidence, and not being scared of the conversation or scared of of these topics. And quite often I'll get that from people saying, well, we can't really call it that. For example, an event that I'm helping with at the moment, it's about stopping men from killing themselves, and somebody said, well, we can't say that. I said, well, what would you like to say? Because that's actually that's the thing that's happening. And
true.
I'm not afraid to say it, and I'm very, very well versed in it, and almost have permission because it's my job. But I think we can call it out, and reminding people, to steer away from calling it committing suicide. It's no longer a crime. In fact, in Ireland, I believe it still is. But when we're saying committing suicide, it's not a crime. So just talk. We can call it other things, other than. I mean, it's not all about the word either. But there's a little insight, talking about insight. And talking of insight, Andrew, we're coming to the end of the show already. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that. That hour, like always on a Monday between 12 and 1, goes lightning for me.
Yeah, no, the morning it's gone very quickly, and I'd like to thank you for also doing the right thing and keeping it on people's radar, that we keep talking about it as a nation, and that we keep on making changes in this area.
Oh, look, it's what I get up for absolutely every single day of my life. I don't know why it burns so brightly, but, just a reminder to everyone, men also matter. Every reason to be helping and supporting men as well. So just reminding everyone, if you are feeling that you want to connect with somebody, try Lifeline. 131114, or you can contact Mates in Construction, and that's national, Andrew. So people in Victoria, Tasmania and Northern Territory, they're not excused from contacting.
No, 1300 642 111.
111, yeah, or 111 or 111.
Yeah. 111, that will be it.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.